Welcome back to Used to Sew, a podcast about sewing machines, sewing history, and sewing culture in the past and present. I am your producer and co-host, Aradia, daughter of your main host, T.R. Kelly, who is here today to talk to you about ready-to-wear clothing, from ancient Babylonia to modern Bangladesh, and as a tool of loosening and then re-tightening gender restrictions. This episode's purpose is to talk about ready-to-wear as a concept and to discuss how that concept manifested in department stores, standardized measurements, and planned obsolescence. Also, we need to clarify what upcycling actually means. Ready-to-wear is one of those things that you just take for granted nowadays, and it really will never fully sink into my brain just how much work it took to make clothes for people before the sewing machine. Upcycling used to mean cycling. It wasn't a novel concept to repair and refresh garments for a whole lifetime. Fast fashion is not the same thing as ready-to-wear. Fast fashion is a thing you can look down on and avoid easily. But the concept of clothing that is handmade being the novel thing? That is a deeper and more insidious idea. Before we get into TR's topic proper, I tangent us a bit into the world of Patagonia, the brand, versus Patigonia. And I wanted to give a little more context about that here at the top. So, Patigonia is the drag queen name of a performer from the Pacific Northwest that is in a legal battle with Patagonia, the outdoor clothing company, who want to sue her for using her drag name as part of her merchandise, which itself is all one-of-a-kind upcycled stuff that promotes environmental activism. It's a very bad look for a large company that touts itself as being environmentalist to be getting pissy about what is obviously a fun pun of a name, but at least it's getting more eyeballs on Patty and her loud message of environmental protection. I would encourage you all to check out the video that I reference in TR and I's conversation, but it seems like that video is missing currently. It's like the link TR shared with me is broken, and at this point, I've spent way too many minutes trying to find it by other means. The internet is a weird place. Anyway, on with the show.
Wow, I'm so excited, folks. You know why? Because it's another day of Used to Sew, and even though I'm over here in the desert, in Central Oregon, off-grid, I can't see anything man-made from my house. But now I've got Starlink. And, oh my God, I mean, I'm not a fan of Elon, but geez, people back in the, 1900s weren't great fans of Singer and Harriman and Carnegie and all those other robber barons because they're constructing the infrastructure of the world. And can't be left behind, right?
It is nice to see you with a clear picture and uninterrupted audio. That is really, really nice.
Yeah. I mean, we tried our normal recording time and it just didn't work. Hotspotting in with 2 bars on the cell phone, even turning off video and everything else, it just is not good. So yeah, here we are, and I'm going to be over on this side for a while. Casting about. The cabin's not done yet, but I do have a few sewing machines set up in there. Husband is rolling his eyes. You can't move in yet. Well, I've got a quilt tacked to the wall. I've got a treadle and a hand crank in there.
Nesting will occur.
So he's like, all right, I'm going to finish your side first. So my brother's coming over next weekend, and they're going to get the roof on. Metal roof. And I can start collecting rainwater for my steam iron. Has no minerals. Yeah, so topics. You told me just before we went on here, you haven't actually sewed, but you've been plying a needle anyhow.
Yeah, like a year ago or more, you got me, I think it was more than a year ago, year and a half ago, you at St. Vinny's found me a cross-stitch kit because I had been trying to do cross-stitch and I was telling you about it, but I didn't have any patterns. I was just putting floss through fabric like randomly because it was something I did in Waldorf and I was just kind of doing it for fun. And then you saw this beautiful, it's like a paint by numbers kit, right? It's this beautiful picture of 2 fairies interacting in front of a giant full moon that is being reflected off of a pond, and it's all starry and gorgeous. And it's a complete kit with all the floss measured out and a map in it. And I sort of just was intimidated by it and sat on it for like a year. But then recently I have such a hard time not playing Candy Crush. Like, I have been playing that game for like 13
Oh,
years.
really?
Yeah, no, I've
Oh
been
my
playing it for a
God.
very long time. And it's
Wow.
really addictive, but I just recognize that tapping on a rectangle is not what I evolved to do. I evolved to be like fiddling with, strings and needles and fabric,
Yeah.
right? Like that's what people have been crafting with the hand-eye coordination and making pretty things and decorations and practical stuff for a long
Yeah.
time. So I've been trying to sew
Yeah.
more and more. And yeah, cross stitch really hits that beautiful colors in tiny squares and getting things very precise. Like cross stitch is very much what I get out of Candy Crush in a lot of ways.
Really? Yeah, I'm seeing that. The geometry of it.
Tiny little squares and
Yeah.
precise patterns.
Wow.
It's like that's what does it for my brain. So I've been really, really trying to work on that, and I am definitely starting to get into it. It's like a jigsaw puzzle. It's like paint by numbers. It's like Candy Crush. It's all
Right?
those things.
All those things. Yeah.
But I'm working on embroidering this very large piece. Well, not very large piece. It's like, a like foot, but like it's like probably 15 by 8 or something like that. Like
Wow.
it's not huge, but it's the biggest embroidery piece I've ever tried to do. And it's
Oh,
taking me
heck yeah.
forever. I got started last night and did it for like 3 hours straight until my back was screaming for me to just please stop. And I got, like two square inches of total coverage done. It'll take me a while. But
It
it's
will.
very good for me. I can still listen to the same audiobooks or podcasts, and I'm still fiddling on the couch and not doing anything remotely productive as far as the larger world is concerned. But as far as like my brain is concerned, I'm actually doing a thing.
You're creating, not consuming. That's cool.
And for the price of like $2 or whatever it was that you paid to get it for me from St. Vinny's.
Man, I saw that, and when you were a little girl, fairies and wings and flying and all the pretty sparkly things, and I just saw that, and I just immediately went Radia, and then I went, and it's a cross stitch kit, and she's still
Yeah.
yeah.
So it's been great.
And since it was, that was like a $50 kit, but at St. Vinny's, I think it was $3.99 or
Right,
something,
yeah.
and I had my senior discount. So even if you never did it, it was like, I miss birthdays and Christmas, but once in a while, I just, this is that person. They need that.
Yeah, and then I sat on it for a year and a half before I even was brave enough to crack it open. So, and now I'm looking at embroidery frames that just like hold it in front of you
Ooh.
and like
The big
yeah.
ones? You want one of
Yeah.
those? I run into those at thrifting all the time.
Yes, please.
Yes, okay, you got it. I just wish I could find Davis needle bars to modify. That's just still bugging me. The fact that I have been recommending Dave Eye to people without telling them, yeah, you have to fix the needle bar. I assume you have a Dremel tool and all that. It's like, oh, crikey. Another mistake I want to clear up from a previous episode. Let's start moving into the episodicus here. I haven't sewn anything this week. It's just been crazy. But I want to correct a mistake from an episode. I don't remember which. It's when we were talking about sewing machines, and we were in a little piece that said, they weren't marketing to the counterculture. And I said, oh, yeah, wait a minute. Remember the one with all the little orange flowers, the genie? And they were marketing it towards teenagers and all that. And I said, and this is when upcycling was getting started. Upcycling is as old as fabric. Back when fabric was precious, you didn't just throw it out. You picked it apart. And then I went back to Little House on the Prairie, and sure enough, there's several times in there where Ma reaches into her bag of old clothes and pulls out a thing and takes it all apart and makes a whole new thing out of it.
Right.
So upcycling, okay, they used to call it remaking or restyling. Upcycling's kind of a new word that plays off of recycling and all that, but it's been around forever. Taking apart old stuff to make new stuff. And that's kind of where we're at now. There's like, people are still reeling from the fact that there are no chain fabrics. Where's Joann's? Where are we going to buy fabric? Where are we going to buy fabric? And a lot of people on sewing groups are starting to say, hey, go to thrift stores, find quality fabrics from years gone by if your thrift store hasn't succumbed to just fast fashion crap. But take apart those old things, Like I said, another few episodes ago, I've been buying really nice quality Egyptian cotton sheets because that's a base fabric for a lot of things. And this one store that I go to, it's not a chain thrift. It's a little one-off thrift, but you can get a king-sized Egyptian cotton sheet for $3. How many yards is in that? 9? You're going to buy 9 yards of Egyptian cotton as fabric. It's probably $20 a yard, right? So there's fabric everywhere. It's up to us to find it. Find it. So, yes, upcycling is not a new thing that was invented in the 1960s.
The term may have been, but the concept is actually as old as fabric.
Yeah.
For sure.
Absolutely.
Oh, that reminds me of that reel you sent me from the drag queen, Patagonia.
Oh.
About her whole thing is not whole thing, but apparently a big part of what her thing is doing climate activism with clothes and upcycling and like literally like taking old clothes and turning them into like these fancy drag accessorized experiences. I've only become aware of her because of the actual like lawsuit thing that real Patagonia is doing against drag queen Patagonia, and it's a whole massive drama thing. But apparently Patagonia wears upcycled stuff, and you sent me a reel just the other day about the back rooms of thrift stores and stuff, and that was from Patagonia.
Oh my gosh, I didn't realize.
You didn't realize? Oh, yeah, no, she is blowing up right now because of actual Patagonia suing her for copyright in an effort to get her to like stop being such a climate activist. It's a whole thing.
Oh my God. Yeah, and Patagonia, are they one of the outdoor manufacturers that's greenwashing that whole mail us back your old gear and we'll make new gear out of it? Which is, you cannot recycle plastic fabrics in any meaningful way without a huge energy deficit.
I don't know, but I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, there's a couple of outdoor wear companies that are doing that, to make you feel okay about buying something new. Mail us your old thing and we'll recycle it.
Yeah, something I learned near the end of my time in college was that the phrase reduce, reuse, recycle had been really warped from its original context in that it used to be that the words went in a descending order of importance. It's starting with reduce or reuse or either way, and recycle being like the very last option of last resort. Yeah. Whereas now we've been trained to think of all of them as equivalent, and you just say it in this nice cadence and it doesn't matter what order they go in and they're all the same. But like recycle is not nearly as good as reduce or reuse, right? Reduce your demand, reuse what you have. Those are profoundly more effective than recycling, but we've kind of been lulled into thinking that they're all equivalent steps because of that cadence.
Yeah. People, plastic cannot be recycled without a bigger energy debt than using new virgin material. And so recycling, a lot of things that you recycle, the only things that really recycle like forever is metal, glass, fiber natural fibers have great reuse potential.
Organic material. Yeah.
Organic materials. Yeah.
I frequently will call the compost the food recycling. I will literally be like, we'll just put the food in the recycling. And I mean the compost. Because it literally is recycling. If eventually we do grow a garden and put our compost on it.
Yeah. I mean, out here in the desert, I'm researching composting toilets for this environment. I know how to do them on the other side. What are we going to do over here? Keeping them wet enough is the problem. Why? So I can grow cotton or flax? I would love to grow flax, but it's not merry old England, is it? Flax is pretty. It makes beautiful, pretty blue flowers.
It is. It's a very pretty plant.
So I got a couple of topics here because we're going to try to record a few episodes. And that's the first thing I wanted to do was say sorry about taking away our great-great-grandmother's thrift by thinking we invented upcycling. Let's talk about our grandmothers. So our grandmas, great-grandmas, they sewed. Our moms, maybe, and modern moms, I'm talking American basic. Okay, because this podcast is from pretty much my perspective, and I'm a Generation Jones white kid, working class. So whatever I say, consider the source. All right. So my mom didn't sew. My grandma did because she had to. Short history of the garment industry. This is from Discover Hub pages. For most of human history, clothing has been handmade. Now, you can say you can fit machines into the end of that. Even today, while textile production is fully automated, garments are still sewn and pieced together by human hands on sewing machines. The production of textiles was a complicated and time consuming affair before the Industrial Revolution. Raw materials such as wool, flax, and cotton needed to be spun by hand into yarn or thread. Weavers created fabrics at home or in small workshops on looms. Before the proliferation of ready to wear clothing, each garment was made individually. Even after the Industrial Revolution, up into the early part of the 20th century, a dress, for example, was made for the person who would wear it. People in the lower classes, servants, and laborers, often wore hand me downs or purchased used clothing. This is why my mom never, ever let me even know that thrift stores existed, because that's how she had to live. All right? Hand me downs and used clothing and stuff that her mom remade. I didn't know about thrift stores until I was a senior in high school, because mom was ashamed of having to wear that. I was like, oh my God, look at all the clothes I can get for $10.
Right. Wow. Such a different perspective just based on generation.
That's when I started taking stuff apart and resewing my own stuff and getting cute names in high school because everybody thought it was cute that I sewed all these weird things. And they were saying it in an admirational way. Like I've said, my last high school in Washington State was quite progressive. So upcycling weird stuff and making your own style was cool. But used clothing was, back in the day, ooh, you're wearing used clothing, you're poor. Though ready-to-wear apparel has been available for a long time, the ability to walk into a store, take a garment off a rack, or order it online is a relatively new concept. In the not-too-distant past, a garment would last a very long time. Today, we purchase an item of clothing, wear it a few times, and toss it. The creation, production, and distribution of clothing is the fourth largest manufacturing business in the world.
Fourth? Whoa.
Ready to wear in the old days. Archaeological records show that merchants in ancient Babylonia shipped and distributed some ready to wear garments as early as 1400 BCE. In ancient Rome, garments were produced in workshops of up to 100 workers to outfit the military. Before 1300 CE, people did not wear fitted garments. Middle Eastern people wore loose flowing robes. Medieval Europeans wore linen undertunics and wool top tunics, made of such durable fabric that a garment often lasted an entire lifetime. Women spun wool into thread, and weavers, generally men, wove fabric in home workshops. After 1350, clothing became more form-fitting. A small, ready-to-wear industry soon began to produce shirt accessories, such as detachable sleeves and collars, as well as gloves and hats. By the second half of the 16th century, gloves, stockings, collars, and hats were imported and exported in bulk quantities. Now think about it. Those are things that don't really have to come in a lot of different sizes, right?
Right. They're accessories. You can, a collar you can fit to the shirt that you're already wearing. A hat, there's only so
Right.
many head sizes. Yeah.
Yeah. I remember my paternal grandmother changing out her dresses by changing the cuffs and collars and buttons. And then you got a whole new dress. So she was the one that sewed, my paternal grandma. I mean, sewed for fun, not because she had to.
Right.
Before the Industrial Revolution, most textile and garment production existed on a small scale in home workshops called cottage industries. Merchants dropped off raw materials to the workers' homes where production relied on self-pacing and included both low and highly skilled works. Industrial Revolution. So they talk about the machines that we've talked about, the spinning jennies and the water frames and all that, power looms. The power loom, patented in 1784 by Edmund Cartwright, wove threads into cloth on a machine. As later improvements increased speed and efficiency, women began to replace the men who were formerly weavers. By 1880, there were 250,000 cotton power looms in Britain alone. The first merchant ship to fly the fledgling United States flag exported ginseng, hats, men's breeches, and gloves. By the late 1700s, Bristol, England was home to over 200 businesses that exported hats, gloves, drawers, pants, stockings, shirts, jackets, and footwear. Notice what's not in there. Dresses.
That was literally where my brain immediately went. Is that a very important garment was missing from that list? Dresses.
Uh-huh. Yeah. We got shirts for men. Okay, early in the 19th century, some large-scale apparel production still relied on hand sewing for piecework. In 1835, a New York company advertised for 800 tailors and 1,200 plain sewers.
Not
Remember,
airplane
plain
sewers,
sewing was a
actual
thing?
plain
Right.
sewing.
So that, you know, poor Ida Hargreaves. I didn't know I was going to sew wings. I thought I was going to sew sleeves.
She inaugurated female aerospace work.
The invention of steam-powered machines for producing textiles and clothing drew the ire of frightened craftspeople and cottage industries. In England and France, angry tailors and weavers who saw machinery as a threat to their livelihood stormed factories and wrecked the machinery. We've heard this with Barthélemy Timonier in France, the guy who invented one of the early sewing machines. Textile and garment work became fast-paced and dependent on large amounts of capital, money, that it took to purchase machinery and physical factories. Workers lost their individuality, independence, and society's reliance on their skills. They were no longer craftspeople, but employees, just cogs in the wheel. Biggerizing. Okay, so the start of the Industrial Revolution there now. Victorian garment industry. So the mills and factories of the Victorian era offered grueling work at poverty wages. The era was filled with floating fibers and caused respiratory problems for the workers. They worked 12-hour days. They lived on bread, butter, cheese, and tea. Well, that sounds like me. Child labor. The invention of the sewing machine by Elias Howe in 1846 allowed workers to piece garments together quickly. Now remember, we're still in a factory here. Although many attempts were made and many types of sewing machines were figured out, Elias Howe was credited for the basic design. Along with marketing by business-savvy Isaac Singer, Howe's invention changed the garment trade forever. Later, Singer was to introduce the home sewing machine, advertised to help women save money on domestic help. So this is something that I thought about this weekend, was like, the first sewing machines were not for individual use. They were intended for factory use, ready to wear.
Oh, that's an interesting lens. Yeah.
Ready to wear was the reason that sewing machines had to happen, not for the home sewer, but for factories, for ready to wear, for that market. And it wasn't until later, just like think of it like computers.
Yeah.
Computers were for business, right? And they were expensive and they took up whole rooms and you had to have specialists to keep them running, just like the old industrial sewing machines. And then later, as the technology happened, then it's like it filters down to the home use. Like now we've got disposable plastic sewing machines and we've got computers we have to replace every 3 or 4 years.
And both of those things can be used for what are arguably potentially little cottage industries. Making podcasts, making an Etsy shop with little bags in it or whatever the thing is.
Oh, this is tying into, so many things now. So that was an important thing I thought of this weekend, was the first sewing machines were industrial. Designed, made, that's it.
So anytime that you take one into your home and use it in that way, it's actually a departure from the original design use case. Fascinating.
Yes, fascinating. All right, hold that thought, because we're going to get back to that, the difference between domestic and industrial machines and sewing. Back to hub pages. Despite the proliferation of ready-to-wear garment factories, many items of clothing were still handmade for the wearer. Wealthy and upper-middle-class women took samples of fashion illustrations to seamstresses. After selection of fabric, the seamstress would adopt the garment design to the customer's measurements. I remember seeing old magazines that would have the basic, here's all the pieces you need. right? This is the basic pieces, but you're expected that you're going to alter those to fit your customer. That's what a seamstress knows.
Yeah. Yeah. I have a book that's specifically, well, I have multiple books that are about that, but I have one book that's specifically about that for pants. And it's very interesting to see, yeah, those generic shapes. And here's the lines where you make it non-generic, where you make it specific. Very cool.
And that's one of the biggest mistakes with beginning sewers is thinking that a pattern is going to fit right out of the envelope. Does any ready-to-wear ever fit right off the rack? Why do you expect a mass-produced pattern is going to fit you right off the rack?
Absolutely.
So learning how to draft and alter is a big part of traditional sewing skills, right? That aren't taught anymore. High-end fashions were often copied by the middle class. This is the author speaking here. My own great aunt would visit a couture clothing shop to try on garments. If she liked a dress, she'd turn it inside out, carefully study and sketch it, and then copy it at home because she knew how to do drafting, right? If you know these 17 measurements, you can fit anybody.
Right, right.
In the late 19th century, the department store introduced the idea of consolidating large amounts of mass-produced goods for public consumption. Okay, there's never been a department store before. But now that we have all these products, we need a big store with departments.
I was like, that's why they're called department stores. Instead of a store for a particular thing, it's a store with different departments for different things under one roof. Ah, it's a thing. Ah!
So we're talking right about 1880s. This really gets going. 1880s and 90s, the Gilded Age. Huge, beautifully constructed buildings offered restaurants and tea rooms as well as consumer goods.
It's a mall.
Yes, yes. By the early 20th century, department stores began to feature knockoffs. This is for like badged machines, right?
Oh, of course. Of course. I got badged clothing.
Yeah. So in 1902, here's a store that would offered copied couture dresses for $25 compared to $75 for the real thing. Very much like badge.
Like, how is that legal?
Okay. And they go on to talk about so the beginning of ready-to-wear in department stores is creating a demand for fast fashion.
Creating a demand. The demand didn't exist. It had to be invented.
No. People were fine wearing the same clothes their entire life. One set of clothes that didn't wear out. And you wash them, you have a separate, maybe 2 sets of clothes, maybe a fancy one for religious services. But you didn't need a lot of clothes until advertising and fashion. Okay, we have to create a demand for this, and knowing that humans always want to have the best. We're a status-based creature. And like if we were birds, the ones with the biggest, brightest wings are going to win. So translate that to clothing. Now we have all these options for our social vocabulary. This is what clothes are. So what happens with this huge demand? We get stuff like triangle shirtwaist. We're talking early 1900s here. Immigrant sweatshops cranking out all this stuff for the department stores, for the middle classes and upper classes to go in and indulge their fashion sense. But, okay, let's go with in the 1930s. Women's fashion magazines often presented illustrations for clothing patterns because many women still made their own clothes at home. Near the end of the Great Depression, the Roosevelt administration created a project to standardize women's measurements for patterns. From July 1939 to June 1940, American women were measured in order to formulate average sizing. This would save on alterations and cut down on store returns, increasing the sales of ready-to-wear. So we need standard sizes.
Wait, remind me the years of this?
1930s.
Huh. Yeah, that's not the only reason that they were measuring women and creating standards for body types in the 1930s.
Well, yes, that's true. That's true.
That's not the only reason we were measuring shit. The 30s is a weird time for measurements, man.
There was a lot of, the whole Better Babies contest, eugenics, okay. But the idea of there hadn't been sizes. Sizes were Well, you go in to buy something and you basically you're going to buy this ready to wear, but you know you're going to have to alter it when you get home. So sizes was okay, 1930s. We're going to have standardized sizes in the United States.
Wow. So the introduction of standard sizes with all of the angst that comes with them is rooted in the same period of time that gave us eugenics. Cool.
Yeah, but it's also about maximizing profits because we don't want to have our ready to wear returned because it doesn't fit or this or that. Because imagine going into a fitting room wearing the full outfit of a 1911. You've got panic. You don't try stuff on in the store.
Sure, yeah.
Your corsets, your skirts, no. Getting dressed was no. So, as mass production increased, the styles of clothing became more simplified. In order to offer more affordable apparel, the amount of fabric and embellishments used in clothing construction decreased. It's just slimming everything down. Let's use one smaller size of button or less fabric in the sleeves here.
Less gussets, less fitting,
right.
Less comfort and flow. Yeah.
Still, garments were generally well made and could last for years. Wide seam allowances made it possible to alter or repair garments at home. So things were still made expecting they were going to last. The clothes I remember from when I was a kid, there was plenty of room in the hems to let things down as your kid grew, right there with the union label.
Yeah, I don't think that was ever a factor in any clothes that I saw while I was growing up and shopping for myself. I had to always take home my pants and alter them, once I got to be an adult person size and my legs were not getting longer. But yeah, as a kid, I don't recall ever seeing clothing that was meant to be let down in terms of what I was able to buy.
No. And there's so many clever things in the old sewing manuals about when you let down a dress, here's how to steam out the crease, and then you sew a piece of trim over it, and then you put more different trim on the cuff so it looks like it was that way all along. All these ways to upcycle but still look fresh. Okay. The mid-20th century brought an overall rise in U.S. wages and the growth of the middle class. As purchasing power increased, people began to buy more clothing. The U.S., particularly New York City, was the hub of garment manufacturing and distribution. In 1965, 95% of American clothing was made in the United States.
Wow. That recently.
That's what I grew up with. Well, you got to look for the union label. Apparel was produced by small independent firms, right? So all these different factories, like Sears wants 10,000 of this, and they will go contract with Joe Blow and Sons Stitchery, and they're going to make those for Sears. Sew the union label in, everything. As late as 1990, the United States was home to over 12,000 independent clothing manufacturers. In 1996, the U.S. textile industry employed over 500,000 people. Today, it is 120,000.
What? That's so much less.
You're going to see why here. Large corporations increased advertising budgets to induce shoppers to spend. Large retailers sought customers by introducing new lines more frequently. The new, simpler clothing designs and new miracle fabrics made apparel easier and cheaper to produce. Now we're ready to wear in the 21st century. Today, 40% of all fabric fiber produced is polyester, which is basically plastic. Fabrics have become thinner and less durable than in the past. Even brand names have reduced quality to compete with large retail chains. You could say Singer started putting in nylon gears to compete with badged machines from Japan, right? Same thing.
Literally, my husband has shirts from when we first got together that are in better shape than shirts he has bought and used just as hard in the last 5 years. Like literally t-shirts of the same basic, nice all over earth tones or whatever. And he just wears them for work, like out in the yard. It's like the same work patterns, and shirts he's bought more recently have had their entire life cycle, while shirts that he had new when we first got together are like just a little worn out. And for those who don't know, we've been together for almost 20 years. So, like, it's not that, it's long enough for there to be a real massive change in this way. I've seen it.
Yeah, absolutely. You've been in the hinge between, yeah, that's a really good observation. And that's why I suggest people look for fabric clothes you can take apart in thrift stores, especially thrift stores in towns where there's lots of old people.
Yes, definitely where there's old people who have clothes from back the way it used to be. Yeah, for sure.
Right. Yeah. Like going to estate sales now, you'd be surprised how many people swarm the closets first. It's like, whoa. Okay. While retail stores once introduced new lines 4 times a year for each season, many chains now bring in new designs every 2 weeks. H&M and Forever 21 see incoming shipments of new styles nearly every day. Forever 21 can create a style from the design concept to the rack in 6 weeks. Overconsumption is today's hottest fashion trend. Where once a garment lasted for years, women think nothing of wearing a piece of clothing 2 or 3 times and then tossing it, or saving it, because our closets have grown to hold vast clothing collections. While mid-20th century homes offered small closets, today's new homes feature walk-in closets the size of a small bedroom. The World Bank estimates that the processing and production of textiles accounts for 20% of global water pollution as well as 10% of global carbon emission. In the not-so-distant past, trade barriers regulated garment imports and bolstered the U.S. apparel business. In the 1990s, deregulation made the import of cheap apparel from developing countries more advantageous for the garment industry. Thousands of U.S. garment and textile workers lost their jobs when NAFTA, the North American Free Trade Agreement, encouraged the industry to move operations from Los Angeles to Mexico. U.S. wages were then pushed down to compete. Garment and textile factories popped up in China and Bangladesh, where labor was even cheaper. Unregulated producers were free to pollute the air and discharge chemicals into their waterways. Workers had little protection, enduring long hours, low pay, and abuse. Dismal conditions in foreign countries began to mimic the deplorable conditions of Victorian England.
Can't imagine why.
The plight of these workers was brought to a head in April 2013 when a factory in Dhaka, Bangladesh collapsed and killed 1,129 workers. So that was the end of this article. So that was the history of ready to wear. Like, it was pretty good overview.
I mean, yeah, there was nothing in that contradicts what we've covered over the last 3 entire seasons of this show. That was all the highlights, all the low points, right?
Yeah.
Like, yeah, we know that story.
We know fast fashion. We it's like triangle shirtwaist, blah, blah, blah. Okay, now here's another interesting thing that I ran into when researching this was the social importance of department stores to women. Okay, so this is from wearablehistory.org, which is a fantastic site. There's no ads on it. It's just a study on clothing by Molly O'Donnell. We're going to link to it in the show notes. So this is department stores and ready to wear. Women had certain expectations that they had to uphold when out in public, one being that a lady should never stop and look in store windows. However, as the decades progressed, the community formed around clothing gave women more freedom than they had had before. This increase in social freedom and mobility was created by department stores. With department stores came ready-made clothing. During this time, middle and upper-class women were moving from the home into the public sphere. There were more opportunities from education and public involvement than ever before. In 1876, the first department stores began to open. These department stores were more than just a place to purchase goods. They offered a place for women to be in public without the expectation of a chaperone.
Wow.
Jolly old Victorian times. Women, you don't go out without,
needing a chaperone. Gah.
This is like some of the Middle Eastern countries now, right?
Yeah, ironically, they had way better rights for women at this time, probably, if I'm
Yeah.
remembering my history of that part of the world correctly.
Yes, they did. Okay, so 1876. These shops were designed to make women feel as comfortable as they did in their own homes. The store interiors presented a home like atmosphere, and they were mainly staffed by women. The prices of the goods were fixed, so women weren't expected to haggle because that was not proper. Proper etiquette from this time forbade women to linger in the streets, and it was improper for women to stop and look in store windows, handle merchandise, or carry packages. This changed when department stores opened. Department stores invested to make the interior of the stores as similar to the home as possible so women would be comfortable there, purchase merchandise, and even spend the day socializing with friends. Remember, they have tea rooms and things?
Let's go hang out at the mall.
Yes.
It's actually a very old and feminist thing to do in a way.
You know, I read a thing about modern malls in the 80s, and it was one of the safe places for women to go. And I've said of my own experiences at House of Fabrics, especially with evangelical women, we're allowed to go out at night and take classes it's okay. We're going to the sewing store. There are no men there. So over time, stores began to put together big window displays and thus created the hobby of window shopping. In the late 19th century, it became socially acceptable for women to meet up with friends in the streets and linger as they examined store windows. Women now had a socially acceptable reason to be out and were less likely to have their morality and social standing questioned as a result. Initially, women were not marketed to as they were not viewed as consumers to the merchants. But as more goods came in from around the world because of the Industrial Revolution, merchants needed new customers, which is when they began to market specifically to women. With the growth of department stores, ready-to-wear clothing became more popular and easily accessible. Before department stores, if a woman wanted a new dress, she had to go to a dressmaker or make it herself. But with the evolution of ready-to-wear, a woman could go to a department store and buy a dress already made. Before ready-to-wear was popular in the 1870s, only rich women could afford to purchase new clothing, and everyone else had to make their own, mostly from recycled clothing. But with the growth of department stores, fashion became more accessible to people since the clothes in the department stores were now cheaper than if she had made it herself. Right? Because sweatshops.
And faster. You can have the impulse gratification cycle not over the course of a week or whatever. It's right now.
In her final paragraph here, department stores and ready-to-wear helped close the fashion gap between the classes. Not only did department stores give women a place to meet with other women and be in a safe place to spend their day in public, but it also made fashion and clothing more accessible to more groups of people. Department stores changed how women existed in the public sphere.
Wow, I never thought that the mall actually had such a subversive wedge position in like changing how women get to interact in the society that I then, come into in the 90s and take completely for granted.
Yeah, hanging out at the mall. That's true. And see, even before ready-to-wear and Industrial Revolution, what did we have? We had sewing circles. Women would get together with their mending baskets, right? Bonding over textiles. I remember, working at the mall in the heyday of malls, the mid-'80s. It was like, that was where people, especially women, early in the morning, you'd have all your old ladies in their white sneakers walking aerobic laps around the inside of the mall and stopping for coffee with their friends. And then after school, you'd get the gangs of teenage girls. Hey, we're going to ride the bus out to the mall and go shopping. And that's like, okay, dear, we'll see you at dinner time. We're going to go shopping. Not we're going to go play softball or we're going to go, do this or that. We're going to shop. That is a socially acceptable thing for women to go do together. One last thing on this topic here. Okay, I'm ready to sew my own. I'm done with ready-to-wear. This is from workingwomenreport.com from the San Diego Union Tribune newspaper. Fabric stores that sell threads, buttons, and materials for making clothes are dwindling here in San Diego, with owners shuttering their shops, citing waning interest from customers. The disappearance of fabric stores is probably not a shock to outsiders in the age of fast fashion, who still makes their own clothes. But sewing garments at home is surprisingly not dead. While fabric stores of yesteryear are falling off the map, a new industry is rising up to meet the modern demands of young sewists, a relatively new term that describes anyone who sews. And these businesses look quite different than your grandma's fabric shop. Hey, my fabric shop was fine. You wouldn't know of sewing's resurgence by looking at San Diego's retail scene. Last month, news broke that family-owned Yardage Town would close its 4 remaining stores in San Diego County, leaving the region with a dearth of stores selling apparel-grade fabric. Besides a smattering of chain hobby stores, whose selection of apparel-worthy fashion fabric is slim at best, there are very few remaining brick and mortar shops to buy fabric for making clothes. We know there's a billion quilt shops, right? Before Yardage Town announced its upcoming closures, a slew of predecessors had already closed down, and they named several stores. In a city of 1.5 million people, why is it hard to find a good fabric store? Good question. The new sewist emerges. Sewing clothes was once considered a basic practical skill, but it began to fall out of fashion with the baby boomer generation. Remember, World War II. The boomers were born after World War II. Mothers were working and had less time for such tasks, and the price of ready-to-wear clothing was plummeting. By the time boomers had their own children, their memories of such skills were faint and increasingly unnecessary. With home economics disappearing from classrooms, millennial-aged Americans and younger have never learned the skill at all. But in the past 10 years, sewing clothing is experiencing a surge of popularity among these generations. The sudden interest is spurred in part by recent and widespread criticism of fast fashion. Awareness of the fashion industry's uglier side dawned in 2013 when a garment factory in Bangladesh collapsed. That's the one we just mentioned, killing over 1,100 people. Since then, documentaries such as The True Cost sparked nationwide concern over ethics in the fashion industry. So there's a huge interest in slow fashion, said Sarah Mitnick, owner of Colette Patterns and Seamwork magazine in Portland, Oregon. People are asking more questions about where their clothes come from. These new sewists are coalescing on social media, learning new skills through videos, taking part in online sewing challenges on Instagram, and creating podcasts
Dun, dun,
to share tips with another.
Love being part of a social movement.
Oh, we believe the increase in social media and online learning has massively accelerated the renewed interest in sewing, wrote Helen Wilkinson, host of popular sewing podcast Love to Sew. The podcasters were shocked by their own success. Since the Love to Sew podcast launched in August 2017, the show has accumulated over 2.7 million downloads,
Wow.
30,000 per week.
That's awesome.
We had no idea the podcast would be such a big hit. It took off. The spike in public interest in sewing has reflected in Google search trends, where the phrase "sewing classes near me" has steadily climbed for the past 5 years. And they're talking about people designing their own downloadable patterns that you can get. The problem of fabric. While this community of sewists bubbles to life online, they're experiencing a unique problem. There's nowhere in town to buy fabric. From rural communities to high-fashion cities with garment districts, independent fabric stores are dropping. If aspiring sewists want to peruse fabric in person, they are often limited to chains like Joann Fabric, now out of business, or Walmart, which stock loads of colorful prints, seasonal holiday fabric, and material better suited for quilting than apparel. Once you get past making pajama pants, it's really hard to find good fabric, said Mardell Bax, a retired middle school teacher. The lack of fabric stores is likely driven by 2 trends: the slow erosion of brick and mortar retail in general, and the changing preferences of home sewists. Many people aren't sewing to save money, and that's new. Bax, for example, didn't grow up sewing but taught herself the skill in adulthood. Today, she makes high-quality clothing with fabric that will stand up to time and wear. This winter, she made a fashionably oversized camel hair coat lined with silk. She regularly makes trips to Los Angeles, where she spends hours perusing shops for things like charmeuse, lace, and boiled wool. The reason we sew clothing for ourselves now is to make a quality project that you can't get in stores. Now, isn't that the truth? Things that fit you, that are fabrics and colors that you like. This sentiment is shared among many new sewists, said Bernadette Banner, a fashion YouTuber who specializes in making historic costumes and historically inspired modern clothing. Banner saw a huge spike in her online following over the past 2 years after she made a series of viral videos criticizing the lack of quality in fast fashion. Her video comparing her handmade clothes to a fast fashion knockoff has been viewed over 3.3 million times. She says, I think people are inspired by craftsmanship, quality, and thought that used to go into clothing, especially now when we are saturated with overconsumption. There is something charming in seeing a thing that has taken time to be crafted beautifully. It's novel nowadays. So it goes on to talk about her craftsmanship. And then we're back to the teacher who says, my mother-in-law had 9 children and she would sew all their clothes because it was the most cost-effective way to do it. Today, home sewists often spend far more money constructing a custom dress at home than they would spend buying an off-the-rack item at Forever 21.
Yeah.
Bags forked over $100 for the quality fabric she used to create her camel hair coat. Granted, it was probably less than she'd spend on a new designer coat, but it wasn't a project based in thrift.
Yeah, for sure.
Like all retail these days, fabric stores can't survive without an online presence. Giants like Amazon-owned Fabric.com dominate the internet scene, but independent sellers are getting into the game too. More jets. And with fabric stores dying off, the internet is where most young sewers are buying their material. According to Bernadette Banner, that's a travesty. One of the most common questions I get is where to shop online for fabric, Banner says, but online is not the way to go for fabric shopping. There's no way to see how it behaves. You need to touch it, see how it moves. And the article ends up saying, the more people sew, the more demand for fabric there is. Maybe people will open fabric stores up again. But I want to say myself that if you can't just jet off to Seattle to visit Seattle Fabrics or go to Portland to go to the Mill End store, go to your local thrift store and buy some sheets and old coats and stuff and take them apart. That's what we can do. But don't go to Forever 21 and buy something off the rack. Don't even go to thrift stores and buy a Forever 21 thing off the rack. The fabric is crap. It's made like crap. Don't do it. What am I wearing right now? I'm wearing some crappy leggings. They're made out of plastic fabric. Do as we say, do as we try to do your best, and stay threaded.
And there you have it, another series of loosely organized tangents around the tango that is fast fashion and what we can do to step outside of that toxic loop, which strayed into the unexpected territory of being unaware of thrift stores, the birth of department stores, eugenics, hanging out at the mall as a feminist act, and helped me appreciate that sewing for non-thrifting reasons is actually a big part of why many of us sew. I might be overemphasizing how much hanging out at the mall counts as an act of feminism, but I just think it's really surprising how often these very mundane things are actually only recently mundane. And as recent history can show, these things can become novel again remarkably quickly. You still won't find me lurking in a mall anytime soon, though. Those places smell weird. I know TR has talked about doing a sizes episode someday, and I think that today was just a foretaste of what that episode will be. It probably shouldn't surprise me that standardized measurements and sizes were crafted in the era of eugenics, but it did, and I do want to come back to that thread in a future episode. Maybe we'll even show you all the song that TR wrote about sized clothing. Next week, we will be talking about domestic versus commercial versus industrial machines. Yes, we've told you about the difference before, but this time we're getting deeper into the weeds. As a reminder, we are unofficially sponsored by Stagecoach Road Vintage Sewing Machine. You can reach them at srvsew@gmail.com. Follow us on social media and YouTube, and you can best support the podcast by sharing it with your friends. You can even get ad-free episodes by joining our Patreon at patreon.com/usedtosew. Thank you for listening to us here at Used to Sew. We always welcome your additions, corrections, and feedback in general. Please reach out to us via email at usedtosew@gmail.com. Used to Sew is a production of Fox and Raven Media. For more podcasts from Fox and Raven Media, visit our website at foxandravenmedia.com.